So as somebody who is writing a book about 2020, tonight's debate, do you think that factors in? Is it a domino? Is it anything that shifted the conversation in any way? What was your big takeaway of tonight's?
Well, I think we won't know what is important 2 years from now until 2 years from now, right? We might look back at this debate and say that this was a turning point. This is when Marianne Williamson became president.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Which is, you say kidding, after Trump, anything is possible, so yes.
Right. Or we look back and we can barely remember it. We won't know until then.
Right.
Because there are a lot of moments, even when we were talking about Donald Trump saying his hands at that debate stage that they were on tonight.
Right.
I mean, if I was asked where he did that, I would have no idea earlier today.
So when you look at just tonight then in isolation, you had 10 people up on that stage who all, were trying to get policy ideas across. Let's start at the basics. Do you think they were successful in doing that?
Some of them were. I think it's difficult to see where they differ. There are a lot of similarities with what they believe, and I think it depends on the personality. I think Elizabeth Warren is very consistent. She talks about the same things in the same way, regardless of where she is, right? And I think somebody like Pete Buttigieg is a little bit less talented at getting across what precisely he believes because of the way that he communicates it in an environment like that.
He's more careful with his wording.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at Marianne Williamson tonight, why do you think she won the debate, as they say?
Are they saying that?
No, I'm saying as people. No, I'm saying as a phrase. People say they won the debate. I don't know how you win a debate, but people say they won the debate. So
I think pundits. This is something that pundits get to decide, right? And so we therefore really shouldn't believe it when people say anything definitive about something where there is no voting. But that said, I do think she was a very strong performer tonight, and I think it's because she's coming from it. It was not the most diverse crowd up there.
Yes. Right.
And I think she is genuinely different, and that helps kind of set her apart and helps her be heard. But I also think the way that she talks about these things, she's not, because the expectations for her are so low. They're much lower than they are.
No, this is true. I understand what you're saying.
They
because
are.
Yes, because you're coming in as a 1% non-politician.
No one was waiting for her to get in the race because they thought she was surely the next president, right? She does not have that in common with Hillary Clinton. But I think because the expectations are so low, she is kind of freed up. She's able to talk and say what she really means and what she really thinks, and she doesn't sound like a consultant, clearly, or not like any consultant I've ever met.
Yes.
And so she's able to get at these kind of universal truths in an interesting way. And I think that separates her from people like Pete Buttigieg or even Beto or any of the other candidates who are so afraid of screwing up that they sound inhuman.
If you were to look at today's debate as foreshadowing for tomorrow's debate, there are 10 other candidates who are now lining up.
Are there?
They've seen how, I think there's even 4 backups if they need substitutes. Those candidates have now watched a debate. They've seen how CNN does it. It's a different style to NBC's. There's a little bit of a different tactic that they use. If you were looking at tomorrow's debate and you were giving advice to those candidates, what would you say that they would need to improve on from tonight?
Well, I wouldn't give advice to any candidates. But
if you had to, what would you say?
If I had to, I guess I would say to try and not be so stiff. I mean, as journalists, we want more information all the time, right? That's what we want in general from any politician. And I think that when you talk in this stilted way, when you sound like a consultant, when you're afraid of making people angry at you, you're tiptoeing around, you're not really saying the truth. And I think people can sense that, and I do think that is part of why Marianne Williamson was able to really puncture through in some ways tonight.
Right. She really had a powerful breakthrough moment. One thing that was interesting for me is watching how different moderators and how different stations can shape how a debate actually plays out. NBC's debate was very different to CNN's one tonight. For instance, NBC would ask questions directly of a candidate, just of their policies. It seemed like CNN tonight skewed more towards how do you respond to somebody else's criticism of you during a race, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Do you think that is something that a journalist should be doing, or do you think that's just up to a network? How do you figure out a good debate as a journalist?
I don't know. I guess the result is what tells us whether or not it was a good debate. Did we learn a lot, right? Was the information gleaned during the debate important and valuable to voters? Did we see something that we didn't know about before? I think people talk a lot about the media being biased in one way or another, to the left or to the right. Usually they're talking about it having a liberal bias, which I think can be true in some cases. But I do think that the real bias in the media is towards conflict. it's not about an ideological thing.
Interesting.
It's just that journalists look for rifts. They look for things that are happening. And often in politics, what's happening is conflict, whether it's inside of a campaign or it's between candidates. That is exciting. It makes for good television. It makes for a good headline. And I think that oftentimes means that you can't really have much of a conversation because the truth is usually nuanced and it's not black and white.
Right, doesn't make for great TV unless you get the people to fight. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
Olivia Nuzzi, everybody.